You're not responsible. It was wrong. Reach out to me. We'll connect you.
I will never see, speak, or hear from Aaron Smith-Levin for the rest of my life.
I've been raised since the age of 4 to follow orders, do as I was told, or risk losing everything.
If we speak out, that's the only way they're going to get the strength to have the courage to do the same.
Why the hell someone has to escape to get out of a religion?
I'm still shocked by the evil. This is pure evil at work.
All right, we're going to come get some extra Scientology edition with Paulette Cooper Part 2. I am Miami6Man on Twitter. I am Chris Creamy. You can email cgshere@gmail.com. And let's talk about that email real quick. I'm in and around the forums on Facebook and on social media and on Twitter, and I occasionally see somebody who's got a story that they're dying to tell, someone who's been through the same things you hear about on this podcast that you hear about on Aftermath and other programs like CNN and 2020 and so forth. And there's a bit of frustration sometimes that people aren't able to tell their stories and aren't able to get it out there. And I even talked to Leah about this when she was on the show, that it's one show with so much time that they can use that not every story can be told, unfortunately, in that format. But you do have options, and this show is available to you. And I value those stories that haven't been told on Aftermath yet, because every story is important. So if you want to tell your story, of course, it'd be important to be able to verify that you are who you are and went through what you went through. But if you could email cgshere@gmail.com, I'll be happy to give you that opportunity. Everybody, regardless of where it's being told, you have a voice and you can tell your story. I know there's a value, even this isn't Aftermath, this isn't Joe Rogan, this isn't Adam Carolla. I don't reach the millions, but I am heard in 10 countries worldwide on this show. So sometimes there's this value to being able to speak about it. There's a little bit of a self-help mechanism there. That whole being able to say what you've been dying to say and get it out. It's a little bit therapeutic for some people. Also, there are some people who listen to the show, or some people who are just listening for the first time, that may be sitting at home, and I've actually talked to people personally within the last week. I've always known about Scientology, but there's nothing I can do about it. And I used to think that way too. Of course, now I have this platform to provide, and this platform to talk about it. But what can you do? Well, I've talked about this recently. There is a petition on change.org for the IRS commissioner to begin an investigation into Scientology's tax-exempt status. That link is on the podcast description. It's already got over 10,000 signatures. Why not get 10,000 more? Let's really drive this home. You can copy the link out of the description for this podcast into your web browser. You can go put in your name and email address, and you can select to remain anonymous. No one has to know you signed this thing. And it will send an email to you where you click on the link in the email, and it just confirms that that's you. And then you've done something. So by all means, if you want to do something, if you want to do more than just listen to TV shows and listen to podcasts or YouTube videos or read blogs like the Bunker, go to the browser with this link, sign the petition, and you've done something, and hopefully it actually leads to some kind of results. So I've also linked into the description of the podcast the suicide prevention hotline. Paulette Cooper will talk about that during the show, and for like the 4th or 5th time since I've done the podcast, I'm actually putting this link in there. It's just important, and if you need that number, you do, go call it. So for now, let's go ahead and listen to part 2 of Paulette Cooper.
Why did you feel like you had to escape? Was he on to you?
Oh, because I've always asked a lot of questions, but I did ask a lot of questions when I was there, and you do not ask questions when you're with me in a car.
Right.
And they began to suspect me. So they called me up to what they call an ethics officer, and there was a room, and there were people waiting to see him, And they called out Paula Madison. Hey, Scientologists, get that? Paula Madison. Okay.
Paula Madison.
You wouldn't believe every deposition I was deposed for 50 days. They would try to find out that name that I had used.
I'm going to advertise this. My interview with Paula Madison, and people are going to know what
Paula
to make
Madison,
it.
a.k.a. Miss Lovely.
There you go.
Anyway, so there were a lot of people waiting to hear him just go in and speak to this guy in the room, and he walked out and said, Paula Madison. I said, whoops, I am in trouble. And he was very, suspicious, hostile. So I didn't know what to do because I did not want to go into that room. Plus, I think I had some notes that I had taken. And so I said to him, okay, but I have to go to the bathroom first. So he said, you can go to the bathroom afterwards. And I said, no, I have to go now. He said, no. And I said, if you don't let me go, I will pee on this rug. So he looked at me, and I said it so sternly that he really believed I would have. So he says, all right, then you'll come in afterwards. So I ran, and I found a back exit, and I ran down to the subway, and there was a sign at the subway, join the world in the totally free. When they advertised, I thought, this is ridiculous. I just escaped a bad situation. This is the world in the totally free. Anyway, so I consider that to be a somewhat bad experience that I had there. So I was negative to begin with, I will admit that.
So this is a weekend?
This was a 2-day trip. I don't think I did 2 days. Maybe it was 1 day.
And you're already being called into ethics.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way. You're right.
Holy crap.
I was a bad girl.
Well, you're curious, and I ask too many questions sometimes too, because when you're interested in knowing the truth, you have to ask a lot of questions.
Right. But people don't. They just sit there and believe whatever they're told. I will not comment on election politics or anything else right now.
Okay.
Great temptation.
I feel like you already have, but that's okay. That's great. That's fine. So this is where things took a really dark turn because you decided to write a book that I think was an important book for you to write. I have not been able to find it to read it myself, but
you can read it free. You can read it free on my website, PauletteCooper.com.
I will check it out. Scandal of Scientology, right?
Yeah, you can read a Scandal of Scientology free.
Gosh, that's some research by me.
To buy it is ridiculous. It's like $300 or something.
And you don't see that anymore, so yeah, don't.
No, you can buy it on Amazon for $300, which is ridiculous.
But no one should.
I believe I gave away about more like 15 years ago. I gave away 10 copies that I had one copy to each of the people that had done the most to fight Scientology, with a little. A little parchment paper honoring them.
Oh, nice.
I sure would love those 10 copies now. I would sell them for $300.
Is that what they're doing? They're selling their
yes.
Well, that's not special.
I never made any money on fighting Scientology. It cost me like $250,000.
Well, that's terrible, Paulette. I would cherish something like that. Why would they sell that?
Right.
Don't buy the book, everybody. Go to Paulette Cooper's website and
go and
read it. I will be doing that.
Good. You jumped a step, though, because I didn't immediately write a book. What happened is that I wrote an article, and I sold it to a magazine that's now Harper's, and then it was Queen. It was Harper's Queen in England. Very prestigious magazine. And it was an article on Scientology. And I didn't know it had run because I was in New York at the time when it came out. And I picked up the phone one day and there was a death threat. And I couldn't figure out, because I was writing little sweet things. Threatening to kill me. So I called my agent who had sold it. And he checked. He said, oh, yeah. He said, the article came out today. And the fact that, and how did they know in New York? It was a local call, obviously. The person did not do it on their own. They were told to do it.
Death threat.
That really started a lot of the problems. And then afterwards, I began to get so much information that I developed it into a book. So that's how the scandal of Scientology, which I now refer to as the book that launched 1,000 suits.
Right.
How the book was born.
Right. Was this something that was personal to you at this point? They just phoned in a death threat? Okay, I'm writing a book?
No, I don't think I haven't started a book. It was simply a matter of having so much information that, I just had to, put it down and get the word out. And I knew so much at that point because I had gone down to Washington. There had been a case against Scientology by, I believe it was the FDA, which said they were practicing medicine without a license. So they had accumulated all of Hubbard's writings. By the way, if anybody's listening and doesn't know, L. Ron Hubbard was the founder of Scientology, a science fiction writer who continued to write science fiction.
Yeah.
Science fact. But anyway, so I went down to Washington for a while and I looked at all these papers, and a lot of it was very hilarious and lots of lies, and that's where I got most of my information. My book was a research job. It was not, most of the books that are out now on Scientology are, first-person stories about former members. But I never was a former member except for that weekend, when Paula Madison was
Paula Madison.
A weekend or a day. I don't think I even went for 2 days. I think that they spotted me pretty fast. So.
But they didn't take it as an informational piece. They took it as a personal attack, namely probably Hubbard.
Yes. Very much. You mean the book? Yeah, very much so. In fact, in one of their cases against me, they had to choose, I believe it was 18 lines. And I found that a lot of them had to do with Hubbard, and some of them were weird. For example, I wrote that Hubbard was deluded in believing that psychiatrists routinely killed their patients. Well, Hubbard was upset because he saw it as Hubbard is deluded. Do you see?
Well, that's interesting.
In other words, that's the sense didn't even matter. And then...
Okay.
All right, so in other words, a lot of the things that they upset them was because Hubbard, here was a young little girl going after him.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't stand it. I was like the Russia investigation to Trump. Constant irritant, no matter what else is going on. And that's the way Hubbard viewed me.
Right. Never about the actual issue, but about saying something bad about L. Ron.
That was but another thing that they just repeatedly sued me on it was my pointing out that Charles Manson claimed to be a Scientologist. And when, it has since come out in other books that Charles Manson, when he was in prison, he didn't join the Scientology organization, but when he was in prison, he did like 150 hours of Scientology auditing. And we all know how much good that did him.
Sure.
So they repeatedly sued me for,
ridiculous things.
Associating him with Scientology, even though it was true. So many of the things that they sued me for were true, but they didn't want me saying them. That was the bottom line.
And that's why you're still talking today, because they couldn't put anything on you.
See, well, another thing that they consistently sued me for was I said that people had given them so many secrets that they could be afraid of blackmail. And they went crazy over that one. And they said, our secrets are absolutely sacrosanct. Nobody ever reveals anything, so nobody would be afraid of blackmail. Well, it was a wonderful show, HBO, if you haven't seen it. I think it was called Going Clear.
Going Clear.
Based on Larry Wright's wonderful book. And and by the way, there was also another very, very good book that has not gotten the attention it deserves, and that's by Janet Reitman. But anyway, Larry Wright wrote this wonderful book, Going Clear, that became an HBO, special. And there it came out that they were videotaping auditing sessions of famous people.
Yep.
Like Tom Cruise, videotaping, and yet they had the nerve to keep suing me because I said that they were not keeping these things confidential. They were not keeping their confessionals confidential. And then, again, after my book came out, I got many, many examples. You can read so many of them now on the internet with people's personal secrets that they reveal in Scientology, believing them to be sacrosanct and absolutely nobody will ever find out. And they take that out. And they say, well, you know, you have a problem with, you know, when you were 5 years old, you had a homosexual experience, you know, with that kind of stuff.
Yep.
In fact, I know somebody who was gay, left Scientology, and what they did to try to get back at him is they went around and told, and this is maybe 20 years ago when it was more of a problem for somebody to be known as gay than today, but they went around, a lot of his clients, he was an artist, and a lot of his clients were Japanese companies that had him do these big paintings, you know, for their buildings and stuff, and they were very, very anti-gay. So they went and told all of them that he was gay, and he lost all his clients. And that had been confidential material. So Scientology says, oh, yeah, but that's not during their confessionals. That's during their ethics.
Oh, my God.
Actually, it is. It is. It is during their confessionals.
Even if it's during the ethics thing, it seems like from what I've seen posted online of the things that they'll ask, it seems like they'll get more dirt on you off of ethics and off of the sex check than you get off of a regular confessional.
Right. And in fact, in my book, I was the first one to reveal that there were these security checks in which they asked, you know, these kind of extremely open-ended personal questions, like, what have you done that you don't want anyone to know?
That's a pretty good first question, right? We get information.
We have 2 weeks to discuss it while I write it down, because that's about what happened.
Right, I'm just handing you the compromising photos to use against me in the blackmail. Yeah, I'm just telling you everything you need to know to come at me. Oh man, so they did some horrible things to you. One of the things they did to you that I think still makes people paranoid today is they had people befriend you and talk bad about Scientology and join you in the fight against Scientology that were actually members of the Guardian's office. Is that right?
Right. Oh, that was done for years, absolutely for years. In fact, even as recently as 5 years ago.
Oh my God.
There was now this is how many years later? And there was this guy who was, actually he legitimately is a writer for Vanity Fair, and he went around to all of us, and, you know, the people that had anything to do with fighting Scientology, and said he was doing this story on Scientology, and we found out when Mike Rinder left Scientology, he's the one who's with Leah Remini on the show, that they were paying him for his information. So that's as recently as I said 5 years ago, and some of it was very diabolical. For example, here's one way they tried to get to me. They followed my mother and found out which beauty parlor she went to. Then they had a Scientologist sit in the chair next to her the next time she went and strike up a conversation and say, oh, you know, do you have any kids? And I'm like, yes, I have a daughter. Is she married? No. I have a son, you know, said the woman. Why don't we introduce them? And of course the son was a Scientologist. My mother by this point had also become quite used to what was going on. So,
right.
You know, immediately, we only found out later that he was a Scientologist. You know, she was one, and so they were always trying to date me, and you know, because that was the best way to get information.
Up to 5 years ago?
Even up to 5 years ago, and if he hadn't been caught, you know, it came out when Mike Rinder came, then it probably would have, we could still be doing it.
Wow.
Yeah, not only that, I trusted him completely because I knew him for years. That's, by the way, why they used people that, you know, everybody trusted. And I told him about a book that was coming out. And sure enough, the publisher immediately got a cease and desist and threats of lawsuit. So he was getting information, posing as our friend.
Wow. Yeah, I even think about that sometimes.
I'm sure that those who were speaking out at this point also have, but you know, again, we're back to the internet. The internet makes things so much easier because you can put down the name, you can put photos and stuff, and
Yep.
oh, I know him, you know.
Yep.
We did OT4 together.
There are ways to find out, absolutely. And the thing is, with that friend of yours, of course, that was going to be hard to figure out. He seemed very legitimate. You know, writer for Vanity Fair. He seems sensible. Why would he be a Scientologist?
The reporter for them.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy. That is crazy.
But they can do less and less now because people are more and more aware of Scientology.
Absolutely.
And but that now, so they're going to foreign countries now. Russia was big, but then Russia got smart and kicked them out.
Yeah.
And I mean, why shouldn't their people steal all the money? And now the biggest one is Taiwan. I think is
really
doing very well right now. And at some point, some investigative reporter like myself, a Taiwanese Paulette Cooper, will go and write a nice expose, and people, will read it, and it will go around the Taiwanese internet, and they'll have to look elsewhere.
Are you still writing?
So, I've written now, I'm up to 24 books.
Oh, wow.
The only one on Scientology, but I'm a writer. In fact, I'm also a newspaper columnist. So, yes, I stayed in my career was almost destroyed, but I stayed in it. Now, also, with 48 minutes, I have to leave get ready at 11. I belong to Toastmasters, where
Gotcha.
I'm speaking and so on. Yeah, so I have to, I'm speaking today, actually. So I have to get ready, but we have a few minutes, so let me just tell the story of the frame-up.
Okay, yes, that was a big part of it, yes.
Right, and it was the worst thing they did to me, or just about to anybody, was they got into my apartment, one of their, fake Scientologists, which I didn't know, stole my stationery, Scientology wrote themselves bomb threats, and they had me arrested. And I was up for 15 years in jail. There were 2 fake letters that they wrote to themselves. I was up for 5 years for each letter, and 5 years for going before a grand jury and denying that I did it. And for 8 months I was arrested, I was indicted, and for 8 months I had this over my head, and I had a nervous breakdown. I went down to 83 pounds, I couldn't eat. All I did was take Valium and drink, and I faced a big trial, and I faced a lot of negative publicity because I was young, single, photogenic, and it was a bizarre case, a woman who writes a book about a church, then sends bomb threats to the church. So it really was a horrible, horrible time.
Yeah.
It still affects me to this day. If I hear something happened in 1973 or 1975, I'll say, 2 years after the frame-up. It's become the benchmark of my life.
Yeah.
And the government we began to give them enough information against Scientology. For example, they have something called the fair game law, which means that an enemy of Scientology can be sued, tricked, lied to, or destroyed. And we began to have enough information for the government to say, well, maybe we won't go to trial now. It was not, it was not a clean exoneration by any means. And then for the next year or so, actually for 4 years, they just kept suing me and harassing me and continuing to, seeing calls, threats, following me, photographing me, sending horrible anonymous smear letters about me. I moved to a new building because I felt safer after a very mysterious attack. Somebody with a gun in my other apartment. And as soon as I moved into this doorman building, which I thought, hey, I'm going to be safe here, 300 tenants received an anonymous, horrible letter about me, totally false, saying that I was a part-time prostitute with venereal disease, building, that kind of stuff. As I said, that was just one of 5 anonymous smear letters sent to my parents, sent to my boyfriend's boss so that he broke up with me. And anyway, for 4 years I had it all over my head, and people thought I was guilty, and there was nothing I could do to prove my innocence. And then in July of 1977, the FBI raided Scientology, and they found these documents about what to do with Miss Lovely, which was my code name, which is why there's this book about this story written by Tony Ortega called The Unbreakable Miss Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
But that was Scientology's code name for me. And in there, not only did they admit to the frame-up, which they called Operation Dynamite, but it turned out that when I wasn't arrested, I was arrested, but when I didn't go to jail, they came up with a second plot to do it again. The second one was called Operation Freakout, and they were going to send, letters to Henry Kissinger in my name. They were going to go to local places and threaten to bomb them. Remember that these are terrorist, they were terrorist crimes even when I was, indicted for it. The government doesn't fool around when people start threatening bombs and so on. So finally, at 5 years, I was exonerated, but nothing, I never got a letter of apology from the government. No. My legal fees alone, just to fight the indictment, that was $28,000, which would be like $100,000 today. And it really just wrecked my life. But I continued to expose Scientology and fight until others came in. There was a lawyer who set up a class action suit, and that brought out a lot of people, and including, by the way, people who admitted to some of the harassment and things that they had done to me. For example, I had gone to a psychiatrist after the frame-up because I was in such a terrible state. So they robbed the psychiatrist, and then they sent my records around anonymously to people. So the guy that did that admitted to it.
Well, good.
And then they had gotten a hold of my diary from when I was 17. And like all 17-year-olds, at one point, I was angry at my parents, and I said, I hate my mother and father. So they underlined that, and the guy who delivered it to my father, the Scientologist, he has come out and admitted and feels very bad because he realizes that, he hurt somebody that should not have been hurt.
I've spoken to Len.
And they stole my book all over every library, and the guy whose job it was to steal it all over Michigan, he has still since come out. But the major people from the frame-up had never admitted anything.
What I find interesting... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I think I have to call it quits soon because I have to get ready for my speech.
All right, maybe 3 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I'll say real quick is the thing that really stands out to me is just how terrible this fair gaming was on you, and this is after they supposedly ended it. There are people today who will talk about how horrible Scientology is under David Miscavige as opposed to how wonderful it was under LRH, but this was L. Ron Hubbard's doing.
Scientology, they will never, it was Hubbard who said that enemies of Scientology can be sued, tricked, lied to, destroyed. Mm-hmm. And anything that Hubbard said is still their policy.
Yep. Or else it's not Scientology.
Say, oh no, it's completely different. It's just not true.
We've seen it.
People are still being harassed and who try to speak out. It's just there's so many that they really can't focus, and it's not very effective. You can sit there and read a website full of lies about somebody you saw on TV.
Right.
And they do follow people. They do something which they did to me for years called noisy investigations.
Right. They want you to know they're doing it.
Yeah. Now, I'll just, in 1 minute, just tell you one story that I always thought was so terrible about what they did to me. During this period of time that I explained with the frame-up, my boyfriend had left me. I was in a very bad way. I couldn't go out. I'd become totally acrophobic. And I had a dog that needed to be walked. And I met this guy through somebody, and he offered to become my roommate. And he moved in, and he used to also try to get me. He'd go up once a day at night to the roof, and he got me to go a couple of times and just to get out, but I didn't want to get out. I mean, I was in a really terrible state at the time. And excuse me, when the documents were, I explained that when the FBI raided Scientology and found these documents pertaining to Miss Lovely, there was this diary. Somebody was writing things like, today she's talking suicide. Wouldn't that be great for Scientology?
Wow.
Tomorrow she's going to see her lawyer. She's wearing a yellow blouse so that I could be followed. And I realized that my good friend who I had lived with for 8 months was a Scientologist. And he was calling, when he went upstairs, he was actually calling in a daily diary about what Miss Lovely was doing. And one of the things that I found most upsetting was that those 2 times that I went up with him, he was a very courageous guy, and he jumped up on the ledge at the pool. Now, this was 33 stories up. And he'd say, come on, Paulette, get up here. Show those people that, you can fight, that you're brave, you're this, you're that. And thank God I was just too terrified. I said, can't you even trust your best friend? This is good for you, da-da-da-da. And I didn't do it.
Oh,
but once I saw that he was a Scientologist, I said, oh, my God. I was talking suicide all the time. It would have been so easy for him to just...
Do you think he would have?
At that point. Yes, I do.
Oh, my God.
That he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. Already, one has a lot of guts. And I think that everybody would have thought that I committed suicide.
No one would have suspected.
Now, whether he was going to do that on his own, I don't know. But remember, Operation Freakout, the purpose was to drive me insane or put me in jail. So that would have solved all their problems very quickly.
Yeah, wow. And he would have been probably moved up the ladder pretty fast. He would have been in a good position. They would have loved him. Oh, Paulette. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, you're happy now? You live in a pretty good life right now?
Yes. It took her a long time, but I married somebody really wonderful. And I live down in Florida, and I have 2 little dogs, and I write for the local newspaper, and I write books on whatever I want to write about, but I don't do investigative reporting. I do a lot of stuff on dogs and cats. And I tell my friends this. Yeah, the reason is that dogs don't sue you and cats don't arrest you. It's a nice life. We just came back from a nice cruise.
I love it.
It took a long time, and I do say this sometimes to friends who are depressed and suicidal, and I say, just get over the hump, because amazingly, things that can turn out really great that you don't see now is happening, but it does. Anyway,
true. Yep. I'm really honored to have you on. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Take care, Paulette.
Bye.
All right, so get over the hump. Paula Cooper, you will agree you was an amazing lady, great guest. I love talking to her. Next week, I'm going live a half hour earlier, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A live Come Get Some Extra with one of the most outspoken, one of the most determined activists and critics of Scientology, autism activist Fiona O'Leary will be on the show. I've also invited, and we've invited several times, Gemma Harris and John Alex Wood to call in live to defend their position should they wish to. This guy Vin on his other podcast can call if he feels the need to defend himself. Don't not defend yourself and then act like you didn't have an opportunity. Wide open live show, unpredictable next week right here on Come Get Some Extra. But don't let me say this stuff and let that encourage you to interact too much with Gemma Harris and John Alex Wood. My understanding is that even if you make them look stupid, even if you make Scientology look bad in the tweets, it's good stats for them. And so any time spent on that is time spent not doing something to expose the abuses. It feels like you're exposing, it feels like you're showing. And of course, it led to me doing this show, interacting with those guys. But I'm not encouraging that at all. But please tune in next week live. And in 2 weeks, author of the brand new book, Escaping Scientology, Karen Presley, will be on the show. So look forward to that. Until next week, stay connected. And that about sums it up.
You have been listening to Come Get Some Extra on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, and many other streaming services where available. As always, stay connected, and that about sums it up.